I want to thank Samantha in the front for her tireless support of bringing this retreat together. Look at this breathtaking woman in the back. We need to look at her and honor her. Thank you, Samantha, for your goodness, your generosity, your caring, your compassion, your patience. We definitely owe a deep bow of gratitude to Ian and Terry, the caretakers of this property and the owners, for their very epic act of generosity to offer this place freely. To Terry's daughter, Gemma, who's been holding space for us in her own way, handling the business of this villa and all of us. Terry and Ian, wherever you are, thank you. And Gemma. To the people of this island that keep this place fertile and moving, I want to thank the people of Bali. Terribly tragic history all over the world, but these people have been resilient. We're now living on their land, on their island. I want to implicitly extend a wave of gratitude and love to the people of this island, irregardless of our thoughts of this or that. But thank you for allowing us to be here, all of you generations, to keep alive the flowers and the food and the land. We can't be here without you. And before we conclude and move into the future, I want to spend a few minutes with each of you if you want to share anything or talk or ask a final question, and then I'll have a short closing and we can move into our lives here and away from here. So are there any questions that you might have that you want to bring forth? Yes, please.
Besides of being with a powerful woman as a heterosexual man, as you said before, answering somebody else's question as a powerful spiritual practice, is there something else you could generally recommend? Or besides of that, what was the most powerful, probably hard to say, then pinpoint out, but is there one specific practice which is which benefited you the most and which might be benefiting us the most? One specific practice, besides of being with a powerful woman as a heterosexual man, you pinpointed it out before.
Powerful practice. You know, all of the videos from this particular 6 days are online. And I feel like I've really honestly shared all the practices that have been most important to me. I would elevate the one word, Dharma and Dhamma, and equate a direct consciousness connection to those words and what they mean to you, and connect them intimately as we do our breathing to make them real as an experience in the moment, equal to the way in which we breathe every moment. So I use this word, the oxygenation of beautiful states of mind. If I were to say it in another way, Dhamma and Dharma is the actualization of mindful intelligence. What does that mean? Dana, generosity of spirit, presence of mind, giving over material things, mental things, emotional things, listening with heart, generosity of presence, of goods, of time, of circumstances, of home, of shelter. Sila, ethical intelligence, committed to honesty, non-harm, to be transparent in our desires, to be sexually and romantically and emotionally with each other, to be open. This is how I am, this is what I feel. Ethical intelligence. And the last thing would be this bhavana state. What are the qualities in your life, young man, that you want to define your life by? Beauty. What is beauty? What is authenticity? What is integrity? What is conscience? What is patience? What is liberty? What is justice? What are these states of consciousness as felt states of mind, and inhabit bhavana as inseparable as you are as a man looking at life right now and breathing and bleeding and emoting, and your brain is firing and we're living in this process of existence in totality, make the Dhamma and Bhavana inseparable from that living unity of all things, all times, all postures, all states, all contexts, all inclusive Bhavana. Let that be the definition of practice, not a technique or a method. Just like breathing isn't a technique. Wherever I am, I breathe. Wherever I am, I'm in Bhavana. So personalize that. That would be my advice. One sec.
I have two things. I would like to hear what you have in your heart about forgiveness, because you said that in the morning you will bring that up, and it's an important issue for you. Maybe just one or two sentences.
About forgiveness.
And the second is just understanding about the term mindful intelligence. Maybe you've said that on the days before. In my mind, it's circling around the question, when you relate to that, what do you mean? Is it like, because you said rather than just changing our thoughts or thought patterns, change the mindful intelligence. That was a really, like, it made something with me, and I was like, is it, when you speak about that, something like the consciousness that you can change within your transformation process, within your awakening, or is it more like something like my divine nature, which I could not change but more get better access to it? So I just want to know, when you speak of it, what do you mean?
Forgiveness. You're bringing up the issue of forgiveness? It's knowing that I'm capable of making mistakes, and the outcome is separation, fragmentation, discord, dislike, anger, judgment, fear. Through my inability to see aspects of my own being, I do and think and say things that lead to complexity, if not difficulty, and denigration for others. And so sometimes when I get more awake, or I'm in the morning quiet and doing yoga or sitting, I reflect upon my past and I go, oh my goodness. And so forgiveness would be contacting that person or people in my heart first and foremost, and extending an honor and honesty that I did something unconsciously, and please accept, if you would, my inability to know that I did something that hurt you. So forgiveness. Deeper than that for me is self-honesty. I mean, I would really like, in for example, in Burma, in a practical way, the way that we worked with transgressions. Every 2 weeks, they have a recitation of what's called the Patimokkha. And people get together, nuns and monks get together, and they chant things, and they get together, they pair off, and they get down on their feet and put their hands in front of their head, and they then tell a fellow nun or a fellow monk, a sister nun or a fellow monk, something that they've done that's been a transgression to someone in the monastery or in life, and they openly confess this in the sanctity of pairs. And if it exceeds in the severity of something to where it was quite serious, you then have to go, you're asked to go because it's voluntary. No one's keeping accounting. You then go to the front of the room and you have to address everyone. And that's sort of the practice of redemption in the monastery for transgression. And all the monks and all the nuns then will listen, and if it's not really serious, they will simply chant, oh, we are honored and inspired by your honor to be so open. And it's sort of not really forgiveness, but it's like an elevation of the courage that it took to be morally conscious, like that, to sanctify the whole. So they're not really forgiving as much as they are celebrating the transparency of someone, of what they've done to violate the space. And I'm kind of in that camp. I don't do it very often to too many people outside of my tribe. I did it a little bit today with Margaret and with the group. We did it collectively in the sitting. But I do feel if people feel in their sensitivity that they've done that with principal intimates, that it's really good to start to acquaint oneself with this higher elevation, moral courage, and should it warrant a desire to actually express what you think to someone, to do it so respectfully, and perhaps even to precede that exchange by even writing it first, just to feel into it. And I think eventually there's a tremendous ethical, spiritual power in releasing yourself from harboring the righteousness of being wronged. So I think ultimately forgiveness is a reconciliation and a reclamation of one's own transformational beauty by not being dependent on someone else. That's a couple of ways to look at it. A book you may want to read, Reverend Desmond Tutu wrote a book called No Future Without Forgiveness. And as the chairman of the Truth Council in South Africa, he wrote a book on the process of what it was like for those 3 or 4 years to chair this panel of people who listened to people who voluntarily came before them to talk about their transgressions. So it's a very powerful book on the process of forgiveness at epic levels of torture and murder and disappearance, like that. So it's a powerful book to read. The second part of the mindful intelligence, is discerning more consciously. I try to keep it simple. In what are the qualities of my mind, my consciousness, that I want to develop to protect and to enhance me and my relationships. So, in what are the qualities of consciousness that I want to challenge and have the courage to release as afflictive to me and my relationships? Those two things are what constitutes mindful intelligence to me. And the only way to know that is to write them down and then to begin to acquaint, as you know probably very well, acquaint oneself more and more with the felt texture of their characteristics. Like if I know the felt texture of the mindfully intelligent quality of honesty, then I can sit, stand, speak, think within that integrity more comfortably. That takes a disciplined inner Dharma yoga asana. I've got to know how to actualize an emotion of solidarity with honesty. What is honest right now? What is stillness? What is courage? What is composure? To me, this is the study of the colors of consciousness, to use an analogy of art. I paint with pink and red and blue and yellow, and I put my brush in them, and I confidently know how to mix them on the canvas. But do I know how to know those colors inside consciousness and bring mindful intelligence to the color and mix it properly to bring it to you and me? That becomes an issue of Dharma literacy, Dharma artistry, Dharma confidence. So that's all I would suggest, is take these words and make them emotional realities and develop the yoga of developing them day by day, slowly, with everyone in your life, that they become the definition of your relationships and who we are. That's why I go on and on about being, first and foremost, an individual dedicated to Dhamma or Dharma or mindful intelligence, more so than a man in society doing right. So that's the best I can say at the moment about that.
But regarding to the forgiveness, I can totally emphasize what you said, but how is it the other way around? Like forgiveness is always like, I can forgive someone or he forgives me or she. And you were just talking about if I forgive. But what's the other?
For you to be
if
forgiven?
I apologize and like, but what's the way when it's other way around? Like, and I'm not speaking about little tiny things, like really deep issues that even might go past lifetimes, and you're really willing and wanting to forgive, because you know it liberates you, you know it liberates the other person, and it will cut off these ties that kind of imprison you. But there's kind of still the maybe subconscious or emotional block. So what do you carry in your heart for that? So the other way around of forgiveness.
Trying to think of who in my life that would approximate something as deep as another lifetime of betrayal or anguish, that kind of thing. I mean, to be very frank with you, there are people in my life who I don't like. So I'm not very forgiving in that area, and it's a kind of sluggish area of me to incorporate mindful intelligence. The other side of that is probably if I were in a desperate situation or they were desperate, I feel that I'm a forgiving person, and that's sort of an old habit. And I guess if I felt more intimately that I'm the one who's burdened by it, more so than they are, I would probably release more of that tension in myself. But quite frankly, now that I hear myself speaking, I quite like who I see in myself right now. I'm okay with the process of coming to terms with heightened integrity. I mean, I find that the more honest you are, the more outspoken you are, the more truthful you are, you really run the risk of pissing people off. And so what I think of as past transgressions and struggles, it's nothing to the more present time area of my life by being more forthright and truthful. I mean, I joke sometimes that I get judged for celibacy trafficking, not sexual trafficking. I mean, it's like people will ridicule you no matter what. You must know this in your own life. So forgiveness is all the time measured for me by how rooted in what I do and think is rooted in discernment and conscience. And then I just don't really concern myself with the issue of forgiveness too much. But including people in the field of where I feel I'm living a life that's different than theirs, like in Burma, dictatorships. I watch the examples of these people. They refuse to vilify them. They refuse to judge them. They just refuse. They're on the right side of conscience. They don't mock them. They don't ridicule them. They go to prison because of them. I would acquaint myself more and more with higher expressions of forgiveness and reconciliation, either by reading or movies or cultures that are putting that into practice. I'd be happy to share these books with you. They're coming out in February of this year, next year. 1,500 pages of epic expressions of forgiveness by people who put it on the line. So let that be available to you in the future if you want. Other questions before we go into you?
I have a question.
Nick?
I was very moved by the story of the Tibetan monk who was imprisoned for 20-something years by the Chinese.
Oh, the nun.
He was interviewed afterwards, and the interviewer said, "Well, what was your biggest? What was the biggest thing you got out of it?" He said, "I was very, very afraid." And this is, "Well, I can understand that." He says, "No, I was very, very afraid that I would lose my compassion for the Chinese, And as an ex-monk, ex-Buddhist, ex-monk of the tradition, do you think that there are some people who do not deserve compassion? Some people who are irredeemably fascistic, Nazistic, cruel, working against humanity? Are they? Is it worth taking the time to be compassionate about them, or should we just ignore them?
I operate more from just the unconditional virtue of compassion without regard for the object. Like, I'd rather just be more unconditional and loving rather than to see whether someone deserves my unconditional love. I do it more for me than them. That's all. I just find that I'm environmentally inside more at peace when I live in beautiful states of mind rather than looking for whether it's appropriate or deserving or not. I disengage from that need for accounting or transaction.
You said that there are people you walk away from, as situations you ignore and walk away from because you
I
can't
do, but
influence them and you can't change them.
That's a different issue. I do hold their stupidity with compassion. A friend of mine said compassion, the operating definition for her is to let assholes be assholes. You know, it doesn't mean that they're not psychopaths or natural-born killers. It means that you don't have any ability to change them, but you understand that their hell preceded their parents.
Right. Well, I can understand why.
So that's one of the things about conscious reflection to help support the evolution of these beautiful states. I think I mentioned, if I did, you know, in one of my books, A Future to Believe In, there's one small section called The Black Box. And in it, there's a political prisoner I met who was a physicist in Burma who was put in as an intellectual into a 6x6 cell without ventilation and naked, and he couldn't really even lie down in there, so he knelt a lot of the time and sat against the wall by keeping his face close to the entrance where the food came in and went out. And he describes in a page and a half the horror of being displaced from his family and culture and children and thrown naked into this black box because he simply studied physics. He said, in a nutshell, how he found outrageous anger towards the regime that they would do that. But then he employed, on an experiential level, the laws of physics. All things are relative and conditioned, and he talked himself out of fixation. Them became replaced with process and conditions. And in a nutshell, over the course of these 6 months, he talked himself out of being a victim and blame. And he said to me at the end of it, which is written in the book, I always thought that it required meditation to be happy, but I dare say that conscious reflection and reflection in the black box has been the greatest gift of my life. And you can call it forgiveness, or is it the process of becoming more mindfully intelligent, of deconstructing fixation and limitation? And I would say it's the latter. That's the kind of thing. I just don't think the world's going to conform to our idea of peace, joy, and happiness. I don't think it's the nature of the texture to do that. Maybe I'm wrong, but so. Other questions before we, please?
How do you deal with this pain of hopelessness?
How do I deal with the pain of complexity?
Hopelessness.
Pain of culture?
Hopelessness.
Hopelessness. I don't have hopelessness, but if you do, I understand, or anyone else does. I'm more in heightened realism. I'm a realist.
That I mean, like you mentioned before, hopelessness about the world and about life.
See, I've gone beyond the first stages. Susan had a very good point. In the earliest stages of coming to terms with the end, because it's always going to be there, but I got turned on to the end when I was 16. I mean, I had no problem of knowing that life ended. I would even pretend to die underneath my bed when I was 7. I was a natural-born Buddhist. And Buddhism, when I first heard it, like at 19, it made so much sense that by being born, you will die. Perhaps you might get old, you might die as an infant, or you could be born as an insect, or the planet itself will go out. It said, wow, I felt it I felt at home with that truth. I felt enlivened by that, like someone spoke my language. So extinction is not foreign to me. I don't feel hopeless. I initially felt some despair, but I've been a Buddhist and connected to the First Noble for decades. Where I go with it is deep realism. And it gives me a reason now to release my, for lack of better terms, just my social autism. I'm more comfortable now being an outlaw. It's normal now to be outrageous. What's the point of winning applause when it's meaningless? I want to meet people in that sacred, poetic, erotic zone of abstract and surrealism and tenderness and harmony and the free flow of mind mapping and shared space and kissing and dying and crying and waking up and doing it again and throwing things in the mouth and doing what we need to do to fight the injustices on our land. I don't give a fuck. I really stopped giving a fuck. So realism to me is like, okay, take me, God. Fuck you, you asshole, for having a world so fucked up that I got to deal with genocide and extinction. What scares me more is my fucking daughter being raped. So I have these juxtapositions of terrors and hopes. But realism here at this point, I fear suffering more than I do death. I've dealt with complexity. I don't like seeing it with others. So I have deep realism into collapses of civilization, countries. It's not pretty. I get a little bit tense around that and want to kind of like build a fortress with pit bulls and an AK-47 and a lot of drugs to kill myself if I need to. I deal with hopelessness in that way, being really realistic. May very well be that I have to take my own life at some point, and that of my friends who want to be near me at that time. So there's an exit. Meanwhile, I'm going to make haste by being the greatest mind that I can be on the terms of my art. I've got a vision for my art in my heart. I didn't get into it here, but I will. And I'm also like a little bit scared about it, antsy about it. But I'm not hopeless at all. I'm a fighter, and I have a deep existential rebellious place in me that I'm like that Uparle type, I would think. I would not last long in incarceration. I'd be probably raped, tortured, and brutalized because I'm so uncontrollably outspoken. I can't contain it. I kind of think that that's like an asset rather than compliance or servitude or obeying the lies. So I kind of feel protected by my personality, if you know what I mean. I'm blessed to have a few friends, but all of my patrons and great supporters are dead now. I don't have the refuge of parents and teachers and best friends. A few, not many. Just came to my family reunion in Washington a month and a half ago, and here I am at 68 as like one of the elders in the fucking family. My brother's 71. We had one person older. When everyone was so much older, it looked like infinity in front of me. And we all went around like this room, and they took the moment and said what they said and felt what they felt and shared what they felt. And we all cried for 2 or 3 hours. That's where I'm at today. My hope is not in tomorrow, but it's in the realism of loving you, beautiful woman. You know, beautiful man, look at you two. That we don't even know each other. We've come to each other's lives. That to me is really okay. If I don't wake up tomorrow, namaste. I fear a little bit with my daughter, but I feel that it's appropriate that I've gone and I don't want her to be so attached to me. So that's the only thing that pulls on me. I feel a little hopeless there. Could I have done it differently? Could I do it differently? Be resilient, be compassionate, be tender, be practical, be smart, whatever that means. Save, give, develop alliances, have some resources that are off the grid, be looking for safer zones, inside and outside. Talk to yourself wisely. Stay close to me if you want to stay in dialogue about this, both of you. I'm going to the country of Burma where I was survived. I survived suicide. I survived incarceration by this culture. And I'm going to go pay my homage to the people and the graves of a culture that gave me life. And that's part of the way in which I'm resurrecting realism, is paying honor, paying homage, paying in a dedicated beauty to those places and kingdoms and people that have given me the resurrection of my heart. And I'm bringing good people to a place that was the most important place on the planet for me, to rebirth a new life from death. And the last place, I will close with this, is I'm a believer. I'm a real believer in the trans-existential continuity of goodness. You and I exist. We are obvious. And I inherited and learned my language, the things that I treasure, from people I don't even know. There's a lineage of life long before us. Moms and dads that go so far back, who knows where and what universe they came from. And I do believe we're in this long existential parade of conditions that have something so special that you have a lover. It's rare. We have friendships and bonds. We have complexities, but let's unfold from them and treasure what we do have. And I believe in the unconditional investment in now to be the seeds that regenerate the goodness in the future. There is a future. There's a life after this planet. There's life that coexists with this planet. I talk to them every day. I encourage you to have dialogues with things beyond your known voice and sight. I commune with the devas and the angels and the demons. I refuse to be possessed, but I want to fall in love with an angel. In the meantime, I have a number of them in my life. You're one of them. So let's not hold back. Let's not hold back. That's my whole emphasis in my life. Let's not hold back. And therein lies where the future, we give birth as woman to a new expression of the things that we treasure now. And hopefully we meet again and we have access. If we only had the memory of who we were in a previous time, imagine if we had that capacity right now to go back 1,000,000 times and say, you and I were allies in this incredible fertile field in some other zone. And we talked this way about extinctions in that area. And here we are again and again and again. And we go like, there's hope. So just trust in consciousness to be its own reward. Love is its own reward. Do it for the sake it's right. That's what I tell myself. Love is right. Conscience is right. Goodness is right. And let that be the oxygen of the memory. Cast way that forward into a future. Just believe in the rightness of love. That's what I tell myself. So from my heart to yours, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Terry and Ian and Samantha and Gemma. Stay close. Obviously, if you'd like to leave a donation, you can. I won't dare say it one more time about Patreon. I won't denigrate this space with my absolute need to eat. Remember that. Don't forget me. And stay close. And those of you in Burma who need support, I'm available online. You'll be seeing me around. I'm here for a few more weeks. I've got a thing on November 30th. And if I could beg of one more thing, if you want to let people know about what we've done, let social media declare the virtue of your strengths here. And if you would like to stay and be part of a group photograph, I would really like to encourage that. And not to forget what Nick and Josh have done to create a World Dharma or Alan Clements community online. And please may allow you to continue the dialogue there and sign up for that. So if you want to stay and be part of this group photograph, it'd be delightful for me. And yeah, thank you from my heart.